Morning and good afternoon to everyone who is joining pending where you are on this beautiful day. And welcome to the Office of Community Services Division of Community Assistance 2023 ACSI Survey of CSBG Grant Recipients Debrief webinar. I am Verna Best, Program Operations Branch Chief, and given the current state of affairs, I would be remiss if I didn't pause to say that we send good thoughts and positive energy to all persons who are dealing with both human and natural disasters. This is a traumatic time for many, and I appreciate your perseverance to make time for this session today. By way of housekeeping, please note that everyone is intentionally muted beyond the presenters to allow us to manage the time during the webinar, as we don't want to keep you beyond 1 hour, and therefore we ask you to use the Q&A pod for any specific questions. However, you can use the chat feature to make any comments during the webinar that you would like to. As usual, we are recording this session, and a copy of the slides and the recording will be made available along with a Dear Colleague letter for additional information on the CSBG webinars page. As indicated on our agenda slide today, we are very targeted in the way we're going to use our time. After you receive an additional welcome and remarks from our OCS leadership, we will have CFI to provide an overview of survey results, followed by a brief period of questions and answers. It would not be me if I didn't do two things in advance of turning the mic over to our Deputy Director for OCS, which would be one, to pause and acknowledge the leadership of my immediate supervisor for her daily support of all things Community Services Block Grant, none other than Sharice Johnson, who is listening in with us today, and to also thank Program Specialist Ronika Carr, who has been the lead staff person working with our colleagues from CFI. The last thing, or the second thing that I would do would be to give you a quote related to customer service, which says, "Competency is required, proficiency is expected, excellence in customer service is uncommon, so aim for that." That is what we are striving to do here at OCS. And one person who represents that very well is Janelle George, our OCS Deputy Director. Janelle?
Thank you so much, Verna. And I absolutely love that quote, and we want to make sure that we keep that at the forefront from now on. Good afternoon and welcome to today's Office of Community Services webinar. During this webinar, OCS and CFI Group will share results from the 2023 American Customer Satisfaction Index, or ACSI Survey of Community Services Block Grant Recipients. Today, you are going to hear a detailed overview of the survey results, the significance of the scores, and what to expect from OCS regarding plans to address what we've heard. Again, my name is Janelle George, Deputy Director of OCS, and on behalf of OCS Director Dr. Laniqua Howard and the entire OCS team, I want to extend my appreciation to this network for the incredible work that you are doing on a daily basis, as well as for your participation in this webinar. I also want to thank the CFI Group for their work to implement the survey, analyze the data, and organize it in a digestible manner so that it is actionable internally and understandable externally. And I also want to give a very special thank you to the state, tribal, and territory grant recipients for your participation in the survey, as well as to our national training and technical assistance partners for your efforts in getting the word out and encouraging participation. As you may know, the ACSI has been deployed periodically over several years, and each time OCS finds utility in the results. We value the experience of our customers, and this information is really going to help us improve how we serve you. The phrase continuous improvement, I know, is one that you have heard over and over again, and we are committed to it. It is a must for us in order to be really good stewards of our federal resources. And we rely on your feedback, particularly from the entire CSBG network, as well as from grant recipients for our other programs that we administer, to make sure we stay on that road of continuous improvement. I will tell you, as our portfolio expands, we want to ensure that we are maximizing our training and technical resources, really to just better position ourselves to address the needs of the network and ultimately those that you serve. I also think it's important to mention that, or reiterate, I should say, that OCS is very committed to advancing equity across all of our programs. To sort of guide the creation of a comprehensive strategy, our efforts will include, and I should say have include, but are not limited to, addressing policies that really perpetuate systemic barriers to opportunities and promoting integrated service delivery using an equity lens. The efforts that we put forth to advance equity among our state, tribal, and territory grant recipients includes everything from ensuring that training and technical assistance provided to grant recipients by our federal staff really centers on equity, and it encourages grant recipients to identify potential equity gaps in program administration. Also really critical and important is implementing policies and procedures to increase engagement among our tribes, and providing other training and technical assistance tailored to meet some of the unique needs of our tribal grant recipients. The tools that we use, like this ACSI survey, really do also support our goal of lifting voices from the field, which is equity centric. It also provides us an opportunity to really sort of glean from the voices throughout the network and gain insights that we might otherwise not be privy to regarding your experiences, your needs. So again, that we can improve our customer service to you. We have been and will continue to be intentional about engaging with you, as well as providing support and resources, as well as information that helps us to collectively advance equity and fulfill the mission of eliminating causes of poverty and increasing self-sufficiency of individuals and families, and revitalizing the communities that we're serving. I know that I am committed, and this CSBG team that you are engaged with and working with are really committed to and believe in high quality training and technical assistance resources, and recognize that it's necessary in order for you to provide high quality services to the people that you serve. I cannot emphasize enough how we see that this ACSI survey is a valuable data source, really, that we're going to use to inform the direction of all of our efforts. And just to wrap up, I will say that I am absolutely positive that you will find the information presented today to be meaningful. And I am looking forward to future engagements like this one that really highlight the benefits of our collaboration between OCS as well as our grant recipients to strengthen the CSBG network. I am now going to turn it over to Verna Best, again, our Program Operations Branch Chief for the Division of Community Assistance, who is going to be providing some additional remarks, as well as introducing the CFI team. Verna?
Thank you so much, Janelle. I really appreciate your insightful remarks today. By way of introduction, I am going to introduce our colleagues from the CFI group, Kelly Stollard and Kirk Farber. And Kelly is a program director with more than 25 years of experience and more than 7 years with the CFI group. She has experience in citizen satisfaction, employee satisfaction, website satisfaction, and contact center satisfaction for public sector clients. So she is a satisfaction expert, apparently. So we look forward to hearing from Kelly, as well as Kirk, who is a graduate from Michigan State University, who also has 25 years of experience in project management and over 9 years of experience with the CFI Group as a customer insights consultant. Both Kelly and Kirk have provided technical support and expertise over the years to OCS for the administration of several rounds of the ACSI survey for both CSBG states, tribes, territories, as well as surveying the CSBG eligible entities. So Kirk and Kelly, I'm turning it over to you.
Thanks very much, Verna. Pardon me, I have a little bit of a cold, so I will hang in there as best I can, but thrilled to be here to share the results of this year's survey. I think everyone will be very pleased with the results. We've got some really positive remarks to make. And Kirk, if you could just go to, yep, that's perfect. So just by way of background, the ACSI methodology is a methodology that has been used with the federal government for quite some time. Since 1999, actually, we began measuring citizen satisfaction, grantee satisfaction, all types of customer satisfaction within the federal government. We have been working with OCS since 2010, and this is the fifth survey that we've conducted with CSBG grantee or grant recipients. The first one was conducted in 2012. This is the second grant recipient study to actually include tribes. So our comparison from 2020 to 2023 results will be comparable because they will include both states and tribes. The objective of the study is to measure grant recipient satisfaction in order to help target setting on the federal accountability measures, as well as identify areas for opportunities for improvement and additional technical and training assistance areas. Excuse me. The survey is conducted online. And again, we survey both grant recipients from states as well as tribes. Next, excuse me. In terms of the survey design, we did design the survey in collaboration with CSBG managers. Prior to launching the survey, we did send a pre-notification that promoted the survey in order to make sure that we got the best response rate that we could get. We launched the survey on March 28th, 2023. We sent out 4 reminders and we closed the survey on May 11th. We sent survey invitations to 108 grant recipients, 53 of which were from states, 55 representing tribes. We yielded a total of 57 completed surveys. 45 were from the states and 12 were from tribes. That was an 85% response rate among states, a lower 22% response rate among the tribes. But this is very good response rates overall, as federal government satisfaction surveys typically range somewhere between 5 and 25%. The response rate does provide us with a 90% overall confidence level with a plus or minus 3 margin of error. And in terms of the states, the confidence interval is around 95% with a plus or minus of 1. The tribes is slightly lower because of the lower response rate, but we have an 80% confidence interval with a plus or minus 6.5. Next, we'll run through a summary of the results. In terms of the overall customer satisfaction index for the OCS CSBG grant recipients, it significantly improved from 2020. It was 60 in 2020, and I'm pleased to report that it's 71 for 2023. That's a statistically significant improvement, and it places the score 5 points above the federal government average of 66. Improved satisfaction among the state grant recipients is largely responsible for the increase in the CSI score this year because it basically makes up the largest proportion of the respondents. The CSI score for the grant recipient group significantly improved from 54 in 2020 to 67 in 2023 as a result of improvement in all three of the metrics. And we'll talk about what those are in a little bit. Consistent with 2020, respondents representing tribes reported higher satisfaction and provided higher performance ratings, but due to the small sample size, the differences that are reported are considered statistically significant. The CSI score for this grant recipient group is 83, which is up 11 points compared to 2020. Significant improvements in satisfaction resulted in notable improvement in both outcome measures. The score for confidence in OCS improved 11 points, and trust in OCS improved 13 points. We saw a significant improvement in training and technical assistance staff. This was an important driver score that improved 15 points to 75. And as I mentioned, it's important because it has high impact. And with this high score, as well as the high impact, it is considered a strength of CSBG. Also, notably improved communication remains a top priority, given its relatively low score and its high impact of 1.6. Although communication scores among respondents representing tribes is higher as compared to the state recipients, the scores for the state recipients reflect more improvement compared to 2020, and we'll take a closer look at that in a few minutes. The data collection, analysis, and reporting driver is the lowest scoring driver and is considered a secondary opportunity for improvement. Despite a 7-point directional improvement, the driver score is 65 in 2023, and this offers some improvement, some opportunity for improvement, particularly in the areas of ease of collection required data and ease of using data in analysis. The driver plan review and acceptance also was considered a secondary opportunity. In 2023, this driver score slightly improved, but it remains among the lower scores at 73. Grant monitoring and corrective action experienced a directional improvement from 68 in 2020 to 76 in 2023. This relatively high score and relatively lower impact puts this particular driver in the maintain category, which means that it's important to maintain this high level of score so the CSI doesn't diminish, but it's not a high priority in terms of improvement. The attributes rated particularly high in this area were purpose for the monitoring process and usefulness of visit, both rated 82. At the lower end within grant monitoring and corrective action was timeliness of feedback. The performance score for this was 63, which offers a little bit of opportunity for improvement. The score for training and technical assistance providers was 85. This was the highest score across all of the drivers. This driver has a relatively low impact value, but maintaining the performance, again, is important to avoid any decline in the CSI score. The knowledge of the trainer's attribute score was an impressive 90, notably up from 79 in 2020. The attributes effectiveness of training was at 86 and effectiveness of assistance was 84. And both of these are significantly improved compared to 2020. Next, we'll take a look at the customer satisfaction index in particular. Just a couple of words about the ACSI approach. The ACSI approach is our sister company, the ACSI, does measure customer satisfaction using the ACSI methodology in both the public and private sector. So this is a great metric to use so that you can benchmark against both the public and private sector organizations. The cornerstone metric for the ACSI methodology is the ACSI score, or the customer satisfaction index score. That score is based on 3 questions on the survey. Overall, how satisfied are you with the services provided by OCS? How well do the services from OCS meet your expectations? And finally, how do the services from OCS compare to an ideal grant awarding agency? So with that third question in there, that raises the bar quite a bit in terms of what the ratings will look like, because we're asking our survey respondents to compare to an ideal. So that usually tempers the score a bit, and we'll talk a little bit more later about context in terms of how the score should be looked at. On the next slide, we show the 3 specific metrics that make up the customer satisfaction index. And as you'll see here, all 3 of them are up. which drove the customer satisfaction index from 60 to 71, a statistically significant improvement. Overall satisfaction was up 10 points. The satisfaction compared to expectations was up 10. And impressively, when we asked them to compare to ideal, we were up 13 points. So very great improvement over the 2020 results. Next, we're going to look at the two grant recipient groups separately, the states and the tribes. For the state grant recipients only, we saw an improvement from 54 to 67 for the customer satisfaction index. In this case, overall satisfaction was up 13, compared to expectations up 11, and compared to ideal was up 15 points. Next, taking a look at the tribes, these scores aren't indicated as being significantly different, basically because the sample sizes are small, but we see very good improvement here across the board. So the overall satisfaction index was 72. It improved to 83 in 2023. We saw improvement in overall satisfaction of 7 points compared to expectations 13, and compared to ideal improvement of 11 points. So again, all good improvement over the 2020 scores. In terms of, if you want to skip to the next slide, Kirk, I'll talk them through the customer's model when we get there. In terms of interpreting the results, though, if you want to go back, we asked that people look at the customer satisfaction index score with this in mind. Scores are considered exceptional between 90 and 100. There are very few scores, either in the private or the public sector, that get that high. And that's in part because of that third question that kind of tempers the score. We think it's important for people to consider the ideal, because we know that expectations are constantly improving. And so we ask that question as part of the index, but it does tend to temper the score. So any score between 80 and 89 is excellent. Any score between 70 and 79 is considered good, and your current score is at 71. Average scores are between 60 and 69, and that's where the federal government average lands, about at 66. So we really don't consider anything below average unless it's less than 60. So just like to provide that in terms of interpreting the results and giving you an idea. And you, as you will see, you do see some exceptional scores later on in the deck as we will look at some specific scores. This is the customer satisfaction model for CSBG, and I'll explain all of the pieces from left to right so that you can understand how it all fits together. So we ask a number of questions on the survey related to the customer satisfaction drivers that you see on the left-hand side. These are the kind of key touch points or the key areas that you interface with CSBG. We don't ask one specific question about each of the drivers, but we ask 2 or 3 questions for each of them. Those questions are asked on a 1 to 10 scale. They're then converted to a 0 to 100, and then they are averaged to make up the driver satisfaction or the satisfaction driver scores. Those are the scores on the far left-hand box. So you'll see with training and technical assistance, you're at a 75, communication is at a 70, and so on. Those boxes to the right are what we call impacts. And those basically tell you what areas you need to focus on in terms of having a high impact on overall satisfaction. Those tell you which of the drivers that if you focus on will give you your biggest return on investment in terms of customer satisfaction and moving that needle. So in this case, we see training and technical assistance, a higher score, but also a very high impact. So improvement in that particular area would improve the customer satisfaction index the most. But what we like to look at is kind of for a combination of low to mid scoring satisfaction drivers with higher impacts, because that is the area where there's not only opportunity, but also a high impact. And in this particular case, we have communication identified as a top priority because it has more of a tempered score, but a high level of impact. The way it works is if you were to increase communication by 5 points from 70 to 75, you would expect a 1.6 point increase in your customer satisfaction index, which is in the center. In the center, we show the overall satisfaction index. Below are the 3 questions that comprise that. And to the right are what we call outcome measures. And basically the outcome measures are the items that make customer satisfaction important, right? So improving customer satisfaction improves trust in OCS and CSBG in particular. It also improves confidence in the program. So it's important to measure customer satisfaction, and we show here the impact of customer satisfaction on metrics around those. So these are asked single questions. And for trust, we see a score of 76. For confidence is 74. And what those impact scores to the left of those are basically, if you improve your customer satisfaction index from 71 to 76, you'd see a 5-point increase in the trust score or a 4.8 increase in the confidence score. So that shows you the relationship between customer satisfaction index and the outcome measures that are so important as a result of customer satisfaction. That's a lot of information on one slide, so I'll just take a minute and see, does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask? If the people that are monitoring want to let me know, I'd be happy to answer any questions on the model. I know we've done this for you guys a number of times, so I'm guessing you have the model down pretty well, but just wanted to pause for a minute if anyone had any questions. We'll keep going.
There is one question, Kelly.
Oh, sure.
What is the 5.0?
The 5.0 over on the right-hand side next to trust, that is the impact value, so that if customer satisfaction index were to improve 5 points, then you'd see a 5-point increase in the trust score. And then the same thing with confidence. The 4.8 is the impact the customer satisfaction index has on that outcome measure of confidence.
That was the only question.
Okay. All right, this next slide just shows an overview of the driver scores from 2020 to 2023. And love this slide, love all the significant improvements that are flagged here, pretty much across the board. Very impressive improvement 2023 to 2020. This next slide takes all of that information from the model slide and kind of puts it in a more graphical layout in terms of taking a look at things so that you can kind of see where things fall. So what we have is on the horizontal line, we have the impacts plotted, and on the vertical line, we have the performance metrics. And what it will show you is kind of over in the right-hand corner, those top priority, those are the higher level impacts with the relatively low scoring drivers. Up in the right-hand corner, there is the strengths. So that's the relatively high scoring areas with the high impact. You see those maintains at over in the left top, the training and technical assistance and the grant monitoring. Those were high scoring areas, but lower on the impact. And then the secondary opportunities are the areas that don't have as high impact, but they're relatively low scoring, and they're areas that offer opportunity for improvement. So that kind of plots things out in an easy to interpret way to kind of see, where the strengths, where the opportunities are, where the secondary opportunities are. On this next slide, it gives you an idea of where things improved or what drove the improvement from 2020 to 2023. And what we see here is it really was training and technical assistance staff that accounts for the largest portion of the increase in the CSI score. Communications driver accounts for the second largest portion of the increase, and so on. But this really gives you an idea based on the impacts from 2020 and the improvements in the scores from 2020 to 2023, what areas really drove that improvement from 60 to 71. that wraps up my portion of the presentation. Kirk's going to take over and walk you through some of the more specific details.
Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, so as Kelly said, I think the next we're going to go dive into some deeper detail on the drivers that Kelly highlighted. And again, I think everyone will be pleased. The theme is that scores improved, and we saw improvement across the board. And I think it's a very positive message from the results that we received this year. So jumping right in, first driver to review, and the format will be similar. We'll look at an aggregate view, and then we'll break this down, each of the driver areas by grant recipients, and then by the tribe information. So first driver, the training and technical assistance provided by the OCS staff in the aggregate view. As mentioned earlier, the overall score 75, which was 15 points higher, so a significant improvement over the 2020 scores. And you see similarly to all the attributes, all of the specific things that were measured, all improved, increased dramatically over the 2020 scores. Effectiveness of assistance to 76, as you can see, all mid 70s, which is really good. If you recall the slide earlier on how to interpret these scores, these mid 70 scores are very solid, very good scores. Also, I should mention, this is, as Kelly mentioned a little earlier, this is the driver that has the highest impact this survey period. And with its improved score, it is considered a strength of the project. Looking at the breakdown for the state grant recipients piece of this, you could see similar, and again, I'll probably sound like a broken record by the end of the presentation, but you're going to see similar results across the board for these drivers. All have most areas, I should say, significant improvement across all attributes. Again, this improved a significant 18 points to 73 for the grant recipients that responded. Notable highest scores for all 5 attributes, as I mentioned. And the effectiveness of assistance increased the most, which is now at 75. You can see that increased 10 points compared to last survey period. The breakout for the tribe respondents, again, as Kelly mentioned, again, strong response. We see strong improvement year over year, not flagged for significance due to, as Kelly mentioned, the low response rate. But for those that did respond, you could see really positive responses. They rated effectiveness of assistance and responsive staff, so they're rated the highest amongst these attributes. But amongst the state respondents, and it was, but said that backwards. Let me just say it exactly. Interestingly, the effectiveness of assistance and responsiveness of staff is rated highest amongst the attributes amongst the state recipients, but for this group, the tribes, it's among the lowest. So it's just an interesting information as you compare the two groups. Also we have an open end in the for each of the drivers. We also ask for any improvements. We have an open end question. So these are just responses that were provided to us, various comments. So this is just a theme of a sample of some of the themes that we saw. I'll leave this on screen for a moment so you could get a sense of these. But you know, things from less emails, some commentary about webinars, some positive feedback on the training that is provided, as well as you can see over to the far right, you know, guidance and some specifics on some things that respondents might be looking for in the future. Again, I make a note here too, all comments are available in the original report that I'm sure is available to those who would like to see those. Moving on to the next driver, which was communication, the aggregate view, which again, this, if you recall, this was the second highest impact area at 1.6. So it does make it, and we did flag this as the top priority based on the combination of its score of 70 and its impact of 1.6. But again, a couple of all positive directional improvement with 2 of the attributes, consistency of responses, as well as frequency of communication improving significantly compared to the last survey period. Look at the state grant recipients only information. Again, positive information, improvement across all attributes. It actually, and this did flag as a significant improvement overall by 12 points up to 68. It was driven higher as we flagged consistency for responses, frequency of communication, and timeliness of grant award information, all were those three that you see flagged as significant differences year over year. Those were the main drivers on the improvement in this communication driver for the grant recipients. Looking at the tribe information, again, I think the main theme here, all attributes improved. We saw improvement, and you're seeing scores, as I could have mentioned this earlier, you're seeing scores for the tribes reaching into the 80s, which, as you may recall, really good, really strong scores. So again, keeping in count of how many responses we did have doesn't flag as significant, but again, the theme here is improvement across the board, across all areas regarding communication. Again, some samplings, and the question at the top, you know, what types of information would you like to get that you're not getting at this point? So again, a sampling of some of the themes we saw in the open-ended comments, fact sheets, timely notice of awards. Really, it ran the gamut of a lot of different communication pieces that people were looking for. So we kind of gave you a theme there. I'll leave this up for a moment so you could get a flavor of some of the responses. I see there's a question, Verna.
The question was, when will the report be made available on the OCS website? We are hoping to have this information on the website within the next 2 weeks. We do want to make sure that the slides and the transcript and everything is available when it is placed on the website. So don't hold me to the 2 weeks, but I believe that you'll be able to see it within that amount of time.
Excellent. Thank you. Moving on to the next driver area, data collection, analysis, and reporting. Had a relatively medium level impact of 0.8. It did improve to 65. That was up 7 points compared to last survey period. As mentioned, as we saw in other drivers, all attributes improved and showed directional improvement, with ease of understanding requirements getting the highest rating at 70. So if you're noticing, the 2020 scores were fairly low in the 50s or so, and you can see most, if not all, scores now are high at the attribute level, are in the 60s, if not reaching even higher than that. So again, really positive outcomes this year, results. Looking at the grant recipients breakdown of this driver, a significant improvement of 10 points to 60. Again, improved scores for all of the attributes. And 2 of the 3 attributes experience a significant improvement: ease of collecting required data and ease of using the data in an analysis. Both saw significant improvement, and those are going in, you know, even though those scores are coming in the 50s compared to 2020 where they were in the 40s. This is the right direction to be moving. So a positive theme there. You're moving in the right direction, and again, all attributes show improvement. At the tribe level, same story, moving into a couple, overall at the tribe level, a score of 80, which is great. And then all 3 attributes scoring, the lowest would be 77 at the ease of using data analysis, which in itself showed a couple point improvement over 2020. And the other 2 attributes involved with this driver also showing between 5 and 6 point improvement as well. Process improvements was the open-ended question regarding this driver that was asked, and here are a couple of samples of some of the responses that were received. I'll leave this on screen for a moment, and a couple longer ones here. But again, I think you'll see the themes have to do with finding things, instructions, clarity, those kind of comments seem to have been the theme. Okay, moving on. Next driver, plan review and acceptance at the aggregate level had an impact of 0.5. And this driver, similar to others, showed improvement. It was up 4 points compared to last survey period. And again, all attributes showed improvement, all now within the 70s, low 70s to mid 70s. The largest improvement you'll see was clarity of feedback, which was interesting because you'll see in some of the open-ended comments that were received, clarity of the feedback, clarity of the instructions, those kind of things Those were the types of things that were commented on. So I think that's a very positive thing when you compare those kind of things to the actual questions that were asked and the data that was the results that we received. I think, again, another positive message. For the grant recipients slice of this driver, a 5-point improvement overall to 71. The lowest score was a 67 for usefulness of feedback, but all attributes improved. The other 4 now are within the 70s now. At the tribe level, 5-point improvement overall to 79. And again, all 5 attributes showing improvement, with ease of submitting going up 8 points to 81. Process improvements was also the open-end question asked in this area. And so I'll leave this up for a moment. And I think you'll be pleased to hear the open-ended comments as well when you do a review of the full set. You got a lot of positive feedback as well as suggestions for improvement. I saw some respondents took the opportunity to thank you and for the work you've done, and you'll see there's, I tried to put a few of those in here as well, but you do get a lot of thank you and positive response in most of the open-ended comments. The next driver, which is the training and technical assistance for the providers, excuse me. That score also had a significant improvement of 9 points up to 85. This is where, as Kelly mentioned earlier, we saw some scores moving into the 90 range, which is exceptional. And you see that within the very first attribute asked in this group, the knowledge of the trainers. That went up 11 points significantly to 90. So it was a strong score at 79, but just this year, really well done, really good improvement since the 2020 survey was done. So positive results there as well. You could see 2 other attribute areas as well showed significant improvements, all 82 or higher. So a really positive driver area for the group. Breaking this down for grant recipients, same theme, all attributes improved, significant improvement for knowledge of trainers, effectiveness of training. Also saw a good significant improvement of 8 points. And then overall for providers up to 84. Again, a 90 for knowledge of trainers at this level. And again, just when we see these scores in the 80s, it's just, very positive. The message is very positive, really, really strong results. Tribes follow the similar theme, all scores in the mid to high 80s with the overall coming in at 87. So, really strong results, really strong ratings received from those that responded to the survey this year. The open end, what could we do to meet the needs of people with a low income? So a couple suggestions there. I think you'll see people were as they should, looking at what would help them, regional, more localized trainings, more assistance in very specific areas that of the project itself, but very thoughtful commentary I thought was provided within this open end as well. The next driver area, the grant monitoring corrective action. Overall, you'll see the impact, we're going in impact order, so this is starting to get lower, 0.3, but this also, maintaining the theme, is improved 8 points to 76. This year, we also added, which was not in the 2020 survey, we have a question, we had them rate the purpose of the monitoring process. That's why you see only results for this year, but it came in at 82, which is a really strong score. Usefulness of visit with a 12-point significant improvement to 82. And then really your timeliness of feedback, which again, if there was a theme of lower scoring, it's the timeliness area when asked seems to get lower ratings. However, again, scores are solid. So again, that would be one to look at there. But really overall though, message the same, improvement across the board, really positive results. Looking at the grant recipient level again, you know, it dramatically could see the differences as compared to 2020. Really strong scores. And again, I'll make the comment, I just talked about timeliness of feedback. If you look at the last metric there, even you're seeing a 15-point improvement for those that responded, which again, 40, very low, 55 on its face alone. And that's right, but again, you're seeing a 15-point increase there, which of course, directionally, we would hope, again, next time we run the survey, we'll see that improvement and we'll be into the 60s, if not higher at that point. So again, really positive message when you see the comparison in the results. Similarly for the tribes, just strong scores across the board. I mean, high 80s, even a few usefulness of feedback and clarity of the assistance reaching into the 90s. The overall score for the tribes for this area, 89, just a really, really strong, exceptional score.
Kirk,
Yes,
there is a question.
yes.
How are the open-ended questions determined? Why are some process improvement while others more content specific?
Ronika, did well, the survey was developed in combination with us and the project team. Those specific, I don't know, Ronika, did you want to speak to the specificity of why we asked those open end that way?
I'm sorry, I had to come off mute.
No worries.
I'm reading the. This is something that, you know, we working with internally with our OPRE as well as internal staff. We made a determination regarding, you know, there's some questions I think that we can get feedback from that is more qualitative, where we are able to look at different measurements to determine, okay, what can we use to make certain changes within OCS? And then there's certain areas where we look at, you know, whether or not it's content, but it's a range of determining factors that we use to make a determination. And it's something that we have been utilizing for a while, along with, again, our folks at OPRE, as well as through OMB. And so it's just a range of rationale for that.
Thank you. And along that theme, I think probably what
You know,
go ahead.
and along with that as well, we also have to look at burden to the respondents. When we're creating a survey, we definitely don't want to make the survey to be something that is highly burdened. So it's about being able to get the kind of information that we need to be able to look at, you know, internal improvements, but also allowing our grant recipients to be able to provide some like open feedback and responses.
Great, thank you, Ronika. I moved on to the slide of the the question there, which was a question about process improvements for this area. Just random sampling, as I mentioned. I had this on screen. And that was the review of the driver area. Now moving on to the outcome measures, the 2 outcome measures, and some other information that we pulled there. The aggregate of the confidence in OCS and trust, the 2 outcome measures that were shown in the model earlier on in the presentation. You'll see an improvement of both significantly. Both were at 63 in 2020, and both now are in the mid 70s. You got a 74 for confidence, and in the aggregate view, 76 for trust. So following the theme of the results, very positive. Breaking it out like we have the drivers looking at the grant recipient breakdown of the confidence and the trust, you could see really strong improvement in both areas, both now at 72. At the tribe level, same theme, both improved. Confidence went up 6 points. Trust, even greater than that, went up 14 points at a great 91. Trust in OCS. So really, really great job there. Really strong improvement. And then at the end of the survey, we asked just for, you know, a general open end, which is any other commentary or additional feedback respondents wanted to share. And so here's a random sampling of that. Again, positive messages received in general across the board. Now, in summary, we'll go through just kind of summarizing the presentation and some of the results that we saw. Implications and recommendations. So the overview of what we talked about, again, I could summarize this, but it was just a great results comparative to 2020, seeing a lot of strong scores. The aggregate CSI score is 71, exceeds the 2023 federal government average of 66, and it does represent a notable improvement relative to the last survey period in 2020. There is a disparity between the performance scores among respondents representing the state's first tribes, but performance for both groups has shown improvement. The difference in the CSI score, this survey period is 16 points. And as Kelly mentioned earlier, the state's providing a score of 67, tribes providing a score of 83. I've mentioned this throughout. Scores for all the drivers showed some level of improvement. And for 3 of the 6, the scores changes were considered statistically significant. Both outcome measures also improved significantly, with the score for the confidence in OCS up 11 and the score for trust up 13 points. Really, really strong improvement there. Specifically in the area, so a couple of areas, we're just going to point out a couple of things that we saw and we kind of touched on earlier. For communication, consistent with 2020, this driver continues to be a top priority for improving the grant recipient satisfaction. This driver has the second highest impact, and despite its improvement, we think the performance score is relatively among the lower driver scores at 70. So we think the combination between that, as we mentioned earlier, the score and the impact, improvements in this area, we think will get you a good bang for your buck as far as continuing to see improvement in CSI. A review of the specific communication attributes, it does reveal that the timeliness of grant award information is the area of most concern, with the score of 61. A thought to address this perhaps is a review of all available metrics related to the delivery of the grant award information during the past several years to determine how long it's been taking from grant application submission to receipt of the actual award notification. Additionally, a review possibly of the grant award process and the communication regarding grant award notification could be considered in order to identify bottlenecks in processes, or maybe identify opportunities to better set and manage expectations when notifications will be provided. To address communication on a broader level, consider qualitative inquiries among grant recipients to gain detailed understanding of the communication needs from their perspective, discussion points regarding the types of communication needed, perhaps the expectations for when they will be provided and how often they will be provided could be covered to provide insight that can be used to develop strategies for improving performance in the communication area. In regards to data collection, we consider that a secondary opportunity for improving the score. It has a moderate impact, and it received the lowest performance score at 65 amongst all the other drivers. Although this area shows signs of improvement since 2020, when you look at its face, there is plenty of room for improvement. We see scores for both ease of collecting required data and the ease of using data in analysis are particularly low. A review of the open-end comments received corroborate the low scores for ease of collecting data, but they did provide limited insight into why it's difficult to collect. So they were saying it's difficult, but we couldn't quite glean why it was difficult. Some did suggest a more user-friendly system is needed, while others are saying they need more guidance and or training. A detailed review of the comments, along with some qualitative group discussions, as mentioned earlier, should be considered perhaps to better understand the different types of frustration grant recipients are experiencing. In regards to the plan review and acceptance area, we also consider that a secondary opportunity based on a combination of score and impact. Although the score for this driver improved to 73, the change is not considered statistically significant, and performance is considered moderate compared to some of the other drivers. The attribute scores for this area for 71 for usefulness of feedback to 74 for ease of submitting and have room for improvement. You see in the lower 70s, there's some room there for improvement. And into that end, a thorough review of the plan review and acceptance process is recommended to determine if there are areas where the improvement could be targeted. You might consider reaching out to grant recipients to discuss the feedback that they have been receiving and identify ways to make the feedback more consistent and useful. Additionally, based on some of the responses we saw in the open ends, there appears to be some opportunity to improve the technology associated with OLDC and or the training available for using it. A review of these comments will point to some of the more specifics or some of the thoughts specifically that were provided in the open ends. And then just a review specifically of the data that we received from the tribes. In 2023, participation was lower than in the past for the tribes, but the performance remains strong and continues to be higher than the state scores. Like the scores reported for the states, however, the CSI and all driver scores reflect some level of improvement. Given the small sample sizes, none of the changes were identified as statistically significant, which is what we kind of talked about earlier. Among the drivers, the plan review and acceptance and grant monitoring, those are the two lower scoring areas among the tribes. The top scoring driver among the tribes are consistent with the states, and those being training and technical assistance by the providers being the highest rated, followed by training and technical assistance from staff. You might look into an investigation into possible reasons for low participation among the tribes. You might look into that ahead of the next survey period, just to ensure there are no underlying issues that are going unreported due to lack of participation. And of course, to improve participation for future studies, perhaps considering outreach to the tribes to communicate the results of this study beyond what I know the team already does. It might look into starting earlier, adding to the communication schedule, those kind of things, to the end of identifying issues and informing the process, improvements, etc., more response, which would obviously be helpful in the next survey period as we continue to progress. And then that is really it. These last couple of slides were our partners at FCG and our contact information at the end. And thank you. I'll just say thank you right now for your time, but I'm prepared to take any questions. Verna, I will turn it back over to you, but Kelly and I are available for any questions at this point.
Thank you so much, Kirk. I was, of course, being a student of hearing this information again and making some notes. And I would just say to all of those who were listening, I was actually hoping to see you using your reaction buttons, the hand claps or the celebrations or the hearts or something, because I do think the information that was shared with it, there they are, let's go. I do think that the information that was shared today is very, very good. As I was listening, I of course made a few notes that I would just leave you with. One, improved score. We heard that several times, 5 points above the federal government average. Trust stood out to me, increasing 13 points. Training and technical assistance, and you all know, given the emphasis that we've placed on training and technical assistance, I do believe that that is going to be an area that we will continue to see growth and development on. Communication, of course, improving, which is important to us, but we also know that those areas that while they improved, there's room for us to do some continuous improvement in developing. So data collection and analysis, the state plan review and acceptance, the release of grant information. And we also know that some of these processes we don't have complete control over, but we can certainly do everything that we can from our lane to make sure that we continue to see these results increase. There was one additional question that was not answered for the entire group. I did want to just lift that up, which was, when are we anticipating surveying the eligible entities? And we are looking to do that in 2024. I would just also say that this ACSI tool is again a way of us saying that we see you and we hear you. We want you all to know that our success is shared success with the network. And in the coming days, you'll see more of the culture that we're trying to create as far as how we continue to work together, because ultimately we want to make sure that the federal office is strong, because a strong federal office can support the grant recipients, the states, the tribes, the territories, as well as our national partners, who ultimately can also support the eligible entities and those providing services at the local level, so that we can ensure that the families and communities we are intended to serve absolutely have access to the best available resources. We are at time. I want to thank you all again for your time today. We appreciate you. Again, we will make the slides as well as this entire presentation available for you on the CSBG webinars page. That's all we have for you today. Thank you again to our guests, our presenters, our OCS leadership, and for all of you. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and we look forward to our continued work together. Bye-bye.